Hello. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the HockeyBuzzcast. And Mike has something quickly to say.
Yeah, just it's funny because being a diabetic, I have to make sure that I check.
That is funny. No,
I mean, I have to make sure I get my eyes checked regularly because because of the obvious effects that it would have, and went for my eye check, and of course, unbeknownst to me, they tell me I have to get my pupils dilated to check. So, and okay, I'm not like around the corner from where I live. I'm like 10 miles from where I live. So after they dilate your eyes, you're out in 80-degree, very bright, sunny conditions, and I'm squinting all the way home. It's like if I would have known that, I would have had somebody drive.
You're gonna be driving in that stuff,
right? But it's like so if anybody wants to know what it's like to drive basically partially visually impaired, I know what it was like.
Stay away from the Cheektowaga streets.
There. Well, you could say that all the time.
Yeah, I spent a month in Cheektowaga one weekend.
One day.
I was there for we played at the Borders bookstore in Cheektowaga. And Eric and I used to say we spent a month there one weekend. Yep,
which is no longer there. There's
no borders exist anymore anywhere. So
I hate to tell you what it is. It's a Longhorn Steakhouse.
Oh man, I actually like that better. I'm a huge fan of Longhorn. I'm a big huge fan of the Longhorn Steakhouses. That's one of my favorite steakhouses. But and then Kevin Allen, of course, is from the Home of Borders bookstore in Ann Arbor.
Yes. In Ann Arbor, for sure.
Where it all started. I visited with the people who started at one point because the band was doing we did like 45 Borders bookstores across the country, and we Billboard magazine article on us and everything. Look it up in your free time, but it's out there. And so as part of that, I visited Ann Arbor way back when to visit with the
that Ann Arbor Borders was unbelievable.
Yeah. That started it all. I mean, that started Barnes. That was everything. It was before.
Didn't start Barnes and Noble. Don't go there.
No, but it was before Barnes and Noble.
No. Barnes and Noble.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Listen, I worked for Barnes and Noble's software company, and that was around after Barnes and Noble, and that was in the 90s. Trust me, Barnes and Noble's been around a very long time.
Well, we were talking the 90s as well here.
No, but Len Riggio started it, I want to say, in the 80s in New York.
And they're the only ones that are still around. I mean, I don't know of any other.
We're going to put a 400-page excerpt together each to discuss this later, Russ.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on. Ready? Here we go.
Sure.
It's the last day of July. Isn't that unbelievable?
Yes.
Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, July 31st, 2020.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Jan Levine, and the playoffs are less than 24 hours away.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Kevin Allen, and I got to admit that I thought today was August 1st. I got up this morning and I was going to watch hockey that counted.
I know.
And I was so disappointed when I realized, and I actually had to be told that it was July 31st. And, we've all had this issue during COVID-19 where you didn't know what day it was or because everything's the same. But doggone it, was I irritated when I found out today.
I know. It's like withdrawal again. Like, I can't do this. This is not a healthy way to come back. Like,
it's the Eklund osmosis effect, Kevin.
What was that?
It's the Eklund osmosis effect. Because
Eklund, when I realized I didn't know the date and that I was so wrong, I actually did think about you. I really did.
I'm often thought of when incompetence is in this subject. But
and I wondered if you thought that there was real hockey today.
No. August 1st is the day that college tuition is due, so I'm very aware that it's not August 1st.
Some of us have been paying already, Eklund. Trust me, I've had a couple of payments go in already from my
that. So have I, Jim. But there's a big August 1st thing.
I'm the old guy that can tell you that I paid college tuition for 11 years. 5 of those years I paid for 2.
There's a reason I didn't have kids.
By the way, 1970.
That is something that honestly, that's why we didn't have any more kids. We thought to ourselves, that's it. We can't do more than 2 college tuitions. That's nuts. That's crazy. You should be told before you have your child, just be how many children are going to be having in college. Oh, this one's going to be aloof, so that doesn't matter.
Barnes and Noble started in 1971, just so you know.
Russ, you're right as always. I apologize, but
I worked for them. That's why I'm telling you.
The Borders was better, way better. Anyway, let's move along from that. Yeah. I'm Eklund, by the way, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday. And from now on, we'll be going at 11 a.m. because we want to do it before this the games start every day. So we're going to be going at 11 a.m.
At least as long as there's 12 o'clock.
Yeah, unless there's a real issue and we have to go later in the day or something like that. But we're going to try to do it before. We're trying to preview all the games that day, try to get you ready for those games and talk about the games from the night before, because that's a lot to do right there. I mean, you can do it obviously an hour. We have a bunch of games to talk about yesterday, and we're going to get to predictions tonight. But first, since we have the incredible Kevin Allen on, we want to talk a little bit about the difference between baseball and hockey. And Kevin's got some interesting opinions on this, on how this is handled. What are your thoughts, Kevin?
Well, I do want to talk about that. I'm sure Russ does as well. But I did want to say that, is there anything better than the way they're setting up this hockey? Like, I used to joke with people that hockey should be played on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays at 10:45 a.m. I thought that would be the ideal time for me as a sports writer to cover the sport.
They are doing this for us. I feel like this is personally being set up for me. Like, I know there's people who have to work out there that like have to work till 5 or 6, but for me,
it's so incredible that we're just going to see game after game after game. Yeah. And now I'm bitter with baseball that they're not doing this. We're not playing at 10:45 or 12:30, and then
that's a good point.
So because it's so incredible. But anyway, as everyone knows, the baseball has had more and more positives. Today we have another game canceled, St. Louis, Milwaukee, because we've had more positive tests. Right. And everyone's sort of been comparing this, and already people are calling for baseball to just fold it up and go home. Yeah, but it was a flawed plan from the beginning. I don't know how anybody thought that you could not have a hub concept and make it work, and everybody could just go home every night, and make it work, because it wouldn't. But that is the point that I would make, because I've had a bunch of people said, this is exactly what's going to happen with hockey. No, it is not going to happen. No, we're all in one season, in a bubble. Now, we may have problems, because we can't guarantee that someone's brother isn't going to come in town and they're going to say, well, it's just my brother. He doesn't have it. I'll meet him. Right. And of course, when you meet him, you're going to end up going to dinner, and then you might have a drink. So we might have some problems, but we're not going to have problems like this. So don't compare this to what's going on in baseball, because their plan was flawed. And, they may do something and correct this. They don't necessarily, although it could come to this, have to fold the tent yet, but it could come to that.
Well, I'll tell you, they're getting close, because I felt like after the whole Phillies thing, they should have paused the sport for 2 weeks and checked everything, gone over protocols, put in the ones that they should have at the beginning, like they started to add, and do everything. But the problem is St. Louis has had 2 positive tests. St. Louis played in Minnesota the other day. Minnesota played Cleveland the other day.
This is so stupid. This is so
now there's an effect where those teams, they haven't shut down any of those teams. Cleveland's not been shut down. Minnesota's not been shut down. They could have a problem already. Florida is still, the Miami Marlins are still in Philly, and they're complaining. But the idea is now they're trying to get a bus to drive them back to Florida, because I guess nobody will fly them. And they're going to get a sleeper bus. This whole thing was the most poorly constructed thing that we planned, that we knew. And the travel is really the killer in it. And the 2-day, again, I don't understand why they're only playing 2 games in each city. Like, that was ridiculous, because you knew you were inviting a problem with that.
Yeah, right.
I just, all of it.
Now they're going to play 7-inning doubleheaders, right? Like,
right, which is an abomination.
Which is just like,
that's high school baseball.
I call it major league.
There should be a 10-run rule too. If someone's up by 10 runs, we call it. That's just
basically
everybody bats every inning. How about that?
Basically, that's what it is, Zach. Because as soon as last week, when there was a rain delay in the Nationals Yankees game, they didn't cancel it for 2 hours, but everybody knew that if the rain didn't stop, they were gonna postpone, or not postpone the game. They were gonna end it as an official game after 5 innings. Last night, the same thing happened with the Yankees against Baltimore. They got to the 6th inning and it started raining. I thought they were gonna basically end the game right there, but they actually stayed and finished out the game.
It's pretty surprising, because there really is no reason to not end the game right there. I mean, honestly, when you think about it, it really doesn't. I mean,
well, you do want to give it's a big portion of the season. You want to give the other team a chance to come back. You do.
But this is the situation that I think is really, I mean, it puts hockey and to a lesser extent basketball in a positive light. And what they did with the PA, working with the leagues to set up as safe as possible of a situation. Whereas Major League Baseball, they were at each other's throats for 3 months. They agreed to something that wasn't perfect. Rob Manfred wanted bubbles. The Major League players said no friggin' way. Okay, you got the fact that you can fly to different cities, and now you're getting, because one team decided they were going to go out to a bar in Atlanta and get infected. Now everything is a domino effect, and everything could fall apart, and that's the fault of both sides.
It's funny to think about it, right? The length of time that for baseball, given the fact that we're looking at July, August, and September, we're really 2.5 months there, and then the playoffs, you would have had a 3.5 month stint, which is somewhat similar to what's going to happen in hockey in terms of the length of time where the players are going to be in the bubble anyway. So, right. As you mentioned, Mike, and we've talked about before, Manfred and the Players Association couldn't reach an accord, and they kept scrambling to try to find some sort of way to, quote-unquote, salvage the season, yet all the other protocols, despite the 117-page document they put together, didn't take into effect what happens when tests aren't returned on time, when certain individuals have positive tests, how you sequester the individuals, and the lack of the bubble, unlike basketball and hockey, is going to, as you said, allow people to interact with each other, resulting in the potential infection of everybody else. And Russ, you talked about the bus. The bus is actually only for those who are infected in terms of staff and players. Those are the ones that are being shipped down. The others are actually heading to Baltimore.
So it's the Greyhound
like leprosy. We're looking at like a leprosy type situation.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
A leper colony on wheels.
Here's the issue, though. The one issue the baseball had that the NBA and the NHL and the NBA were going into their playoffs, and we were going to lose people. Like only a few players are going to have to stay the duration. Right. In baseball, they were trying to play a regular season, which is a difference. I understood that from the players' perspective.
True.
But I also think the players have not taken this as seriously as they should. Right. I've really enjoyed watching the baseball. It's been fun to me.
Yeah, me too.
And I every night, I've stayed up too late because I've been watching baseball. But my observation is too many people are not wearing masks in the dugout. They're wearing masks below their nose. Like Mondesi on Kansas City is wearing it in the field, but it's not covering his nose.
Right.
Like, they're not wearing it correctly. And they're sort of being cavalier about it all.
It gets infinitely. I mean, wearing masks, Kevin, it's so cavalier and what's interesting is it's human nature, right? Like the whole thing is like the more you get towards normalcy, the harder it gets to wear a mask.
Right.
The reality is that, like, and I've seen it in the best example I can use is the beach. Okay, where I go down to the beach, and everybody's outside, which is nice. We're outside, that's good. It feels pretty normal. Beautiful people, everyone's hanging out. There's socially distanced. We have a gazebo we throw up, like a 13-foot by 13-foot, like one of those folded out gazebos. That kind of gives us our socially distanced space, so everyone's not around us. And yet you're out there, and we're wearing masks when we're not in our gazebo. But when you walk, so when what do you do at the beach? You walk along the ocean. That's one of the things you do. You walk back. That's a big thing everyone does when they go to the beach. I don't see anyone wearing a mask when they're doing that. Everyone's passing each other. It's just, so we're usually parked out close to the ocean. So we're watching people walk back and forth. We walk out, we put a mask on. But if it's harder because you're like, this feels so normal. And then, it's not, and I see with baseball, I see what they're doing where people they're back into their normal kind of worlds. And it gets like. Right.
But the thing is that the players are not adapting to Kevin.
Not at all.
I mean, they've set up basically what, like you said, a gazebo or a tent behind, and nobody, like I saw Max Scherzer sitting behind there, Garrett Cole, a couple other players in different games. Nobody's sitting back there. They're all sitting in the dugout. Like Cespedes hits a home run for the Mets, and Ahmed Rosario jumps into his arm.
I know.
Okay, so.
Well,
I agree.
It's the problem is it's all on us, and it's all on them for their season. Like. Right. I had a fantasy baseball draft, and I host every year. I've been in this league 20-some years, and I sent an email out and say, I'm going to arrange the chairs so they're socially distanced, and explain what I was doing with the food to make it a little bit different. But I said nothing about mask, and I said to my wife, I wonder what's going to happen when everybody shows up. Now, everybody who walked in my front door had a mask on.
Really?
And we held that draft all day. And other than when we ate, Everybody wore their mask, and not one time did I see anybody fooling around with it, pulling it down.
Yeah.
Now, saying all that, these are people who have jobs who are accustomed to doing that, where you have to wear a mask all day, and now it's become second nature to us. Like it doesn't, we don't even think about it.
No, we don't. I mean, it doesn't bother me when I'm home. When I'm here, I'm like, we always have, we always have masks. We have our masks. We have our,
right. We don't think about it. And my point is, that's where athletes have to get to.
They do have to get there. The problem is they're not home. Take them out. Take them out of the home, and they're not thinking that way anymore.
So the only guy I saw doing it was Clint Frazier from the Yankees, was wearing a mask in the field and at the plate, right? And they made a big deal of pointing out the fact that he was doing so, which lets you know that it was the aberration and not the norm, despite everything we're going through. And now that he's down in the minors, you see a handful of people doing so. But as you said, Kevin, on the bench and in the field, you don't see guys in terms of wearing the masks and covering themselves to make sure you don't have potentially the spread.
And if you want a good look, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, a look inside the bubble, I'm sure more than a few players are doing this, but minor league goaltender for the Toronto Marlies, who's one of the 4 Leaf goalies, Casimir Kaskasuo, has been doing a video blog.
Really fascinating.
And he shows how like everything is sealed. Like they get stuff in their room with their supplements or whatever everything they go down to their for breakfast, and they have like an omelet station, but there's
every team has their own room,
right? Their own floor with the team insignia, all so you're on
PlayStation 4 set up in each room. We saw that, and there's a ping pong table in each team has their own little. And I will tell you,
they did talk about on the call that in another week or two, it is possible they're going to let players congregate from other teams. Right now, they're saying they don't want to because it's the playoffs, but they may start to. But at that point, they'll be safe. So once
they're in there 14 days, things get a lot better for them. Right. As long as they're just working with each other.
What you can tell by the doctors being on that call was the forethought that went into the plan, because they went through all the different possible permutations or issues that could arise in order to make sure they covered them in advance, as opposed to being proactive and not reactive.
I want to end with this, because here's how crazy this is. How good good job the NHL is doing. I listened to Larry Brooks today on XM call the NHL's job at handling this brilliant. Larry Brooks.
That's true.
And he said, after he said it, he's like, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but they are absolutely brilliant. Yes, that's me saying, and he admitted it himself. He's like, I'm going to tell you that the NHL has done everything right. He's like, yes, that's me saying, and he was just joking about himself saying it. But when you're getting to the point where Larry Brooks is doing that,
you had us said Larry Brooks said it was brilliant. Nothing more needs to be said.
Right. I mean, having a sealed path, and believe me, I've walked the path from Union Station, where the Scotiabank Arena is, to like the Eaton Center or to other like food courts in the area, the Hockey Hall of Fame. I've walked that path. They have a sealed path that is completely separate from the public, that the players can walk the 2 blocks from the Royal York Hotel to the arena. So it's completely pristine. They've got it fenced in. They've got it blocked in. It's
I mean, and the players, and I talked to somebody yesterday who's in there, and he said, he said, granted, he said this is a GM, right? And I was talking to him, and he's assistant GM. I'm talking to him, and he says to me, he says, remember, we are only a couple days in here. These guys are going to go a little stir crazy at some point. There's no question that right now, I mean, and I know the NHL's got like stages, like they're gonna suddenly like put like a pinball machine in, like they have things that they're going to be doing as time goes on.
Well, and the excursion we talked about, they're going to have excursions.
Right. They have excursions. There could be a golf thing where they close down a golf course, for them and stuff like that. So and every 2 weeks we're going to be sending away half of everybody, right? So that's like the whole thing. That's the other thing. That's just the way it works, right? So 2 weeks from now, or even a week and a half from now, we'll have like this first round out, and then we'll down to 16. Then 2 weeks after that, we're down to 8. So but people who are there for a very long time, he's like, don't doubt yourself. I mean,
at least the Leafs could walk home.
Yeah, but as you get closer to the Cup, the likelihood of you wanting to do anything to put it at risk is going to hopefully get less and less.
That's exactly what he said. Right now, he says his fear is like, next week, but everybody right now is trying to make it. There's always something. There's like a carrot. It's like a carrot. They want to make the playoffs. So I think that and he also said that there's definitely a feeling among the players, and you kind of heard Sean Couturier say this the other day, that they owe this. to society for how much they get paid to do this. And I thought that was really a cool thing. Like to hear him say that, he's like, listen, like we're playing a game. This is a lot of fun. People are dying all over the place. And he said, if we can bring a little bit of happiness, you know, we get paid all this money, you know, if they're paying somebody this much money, he says, I can go any fan out there and say, I'll pay you this much money, and they'll quarantine themselves for a year. He's like, this is a crazy amount of money to make. He's like, we owe the society. And I was just so like, Couturier is just freaking amazing. I mean, just hearing that kind of thing just made me very happy that, you know, I think hockey players get it, you know, and that's the perfect truth, because you're getting paid a lot of money and bringing a lot of joy to people's lives that are really crazy right now.
But let's talk now about the game.
Let's go back to the games. All right. So since we don't have to talk about yesterday's games necessarily, because I want to get into the predictions.
Well, can we? I'll just say one thing about
a couple things about it if you want.
Yeah, you could see, especially in the Boston Columbus game, it was very similar to that Chicago St. Louis game, where a team in the round robin really isn't invested in that exhibition game because they know they have 3 essential warm-up games until the games really count. And Columbus was sharp and ready right away. I think Chicago was to a lesser extent, but pretty much against St. Louis. Yep. So, you know, there's a different mindset with the teams in the play-in round than the teams in the round robin.
Oh, yeah. So right. Here's how I think we can do this. Okay. I think this will be the quickest way to do it and the most efficient. I'm going to give you the series. I'm going to give you my brief summation of it and prediction, like two sentences.
Okay.
If anyone out there disagrees with it horribly, like just raise your hand. We'll go to you until you can talk about it and tell me what you disagree with. If you, like you can just tie your hand.
We're disagreeing with the approach already.
Like sit on your hands, be good. And also, all right, I knew this would go here. Swindled and nonsense even quicker than I had planned. Okay, so here we go. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do that, and then you guys can tell me. So we're going to start right off the bat with Toronto and Columbus. Okay, Toronto, Columbus. This series, I earlier picked Toronto to win this series and felt pretty confident about it. I've changed my tone completely, and not just based on Columbus last night, but based on the research I did about Columbus in the second half of the season. I think they're going to be too much for the Leafs when it comes to work ethic. I think Toronto has the talent up front to play with anyone, but the Jackets' 4 lines of forechecking are going to kind of lead to a devastating amount of turnovers in their end. That's going to put Anderson, who also has one of his weaknesses to me are weird goals. Like he's great in normal spots, and Columbus throws things at you from all angles. That's not one of Anderson's strengths. So to me, I'm going with Columbus in 4. Anyone disagree?
I don't disagree. What I was going to say when you watch the broadcast too. And I initially picked the Leafs, and I'm going with Columbus too. I didn't know Liam Foudy was going to be on the team. Liam Foudy is fast and physical and can add offense, and he already did yesterday. And so that's something I didn't imagine when we did this months ago. The other thing is, and this was good on the broadcast that they mentioned it, Rimmer mentioned this, they're doing everything they can to keep Ryan Murray healthy, because if he's healthy, then they have 2 solid pairings, and that really makes them formidable. So their goaltending's fine. So I like.
Yeah. All right, Kevin disagrees. Then we'll go to Mike because obviously you're tied to this series. So.
Yeah. I mean, originally I thought Columbus was going to beat them, and now it's become trendy. Everybody's saying Columbus is going to beat Toronto. But I think we're selling short just how dynamic that offensive group really is with Toronto. And Columbus is a very impressive team. You know how much I like them. I think John Tortorella has done a masterful job, and Seth Jones and Werenski are elite level players.
Yeah.
But they don't have anybody up front that's like Matthews and Marner and Tavares and Nylander and that whole group together that can just really, really create a lot of offense. So I'm just mostly on a hunch, and I'm going to be brutally honest. Mostly, I'm doing it because everybody I know now is picking Columbus. So I just go against the grain and pick Toronto. But I do think we're maybe underselling how talented Toronto is up front. I know what their warts are. We all do. But sometimes offense have to win?
You're right. It's not the best for them. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, it would be nice if offense could win, but with this particular team, it hasn't. against Washington, who I think Washington was a better defensive team, and the Leafs were very young. And then against Boston twice, they just have a mental block against the Bruins, but the Bruins are a much more complete two-way team. In this instance, you would think that the Leafs, now with the fourth kick at the can playoff-wise, that guys like Matthews and Tavares and Marner and Nylander would start developing that playoff savvy. But the warts, and Kev, I picked Columbus when the series was first determined. Because I thought it was the worst matchup that Toronto could come up against, because Columbus is a big team. They play physically. They won't have Josh Anderson in the lineup. That would make it even worse. But Foodie was impressive when I saw him yesterday. They got good goaltending out of Korpisalo. Okay, we cannot depend on whether that goaltending is going to translate to Game 1 on Sunday, but he looked solid. I think even better than Merzlikins did. And with the Leafs, the debate is: are we going to get October Freddie or November Freddie? Because October Freddie is the guy who lets in the bad goals, like Eck is saying.
Isn't he also the Halloween character from the
there you go. And November Freddie is the guy who usually wins goalie of the month. And
right. That's a good point.
So I mean that's one problem. And a guy like Tyson Barrie, they're trying to limit his inability to play defense by playing him on the third pair, and he still gives away the puck, and he's going to be out there a lot. Yeah. Turnovers, and Sheldon Keefe has been stressing defense with this team, and I don't know whether you can make a racehorse become a plow horse, and that's the problem here. So I'm going to stick with Columbus in 5.
Okay, Jan.
I need 15 seconds for a rebuttal.
Sure.
Okay. And the same thing happened yesterday when I did a podcast with Bob Duff, who grew up a Toronto Maple Leafs fan.
Right.
Every Maple Leafs fan I know never picks the Maple Leafs to win.
Oh no, they hate that. That's for sure. You're right.
They just can't do it. I love Leafs Nation. Because when you write on Leafs, you're going to hear from them.
I know.
They're going to have something to say, but they can't in good conscience say their team is going to win. They've got 153,427 reasons why their team will lose. So you have to discount everything Mike just said. That's all I'm saying. You have to discount Mike. He may actually be right, but you have to discount it because he always says the Maple Leafs are going to lose.
But Kevin, they've been right for 53 years in a row. That's a pretty good record.
I get it, but I think they always, that's true. They just tend to, they love their team so much that they just can't. They just think, oh, it's going to go bad because
it's emotionally easier. It's emotionally easier, Kevin, if you pick the team to lose and they win,
right? And
you're like, wow, that's great. Then if you pick them to win and they lose.
So Bob Duff, by the way, picked Blue Jackets yesterday, and of course I picked them.
There you go. All right, so I'm going to move. Jan,
Bob is a smart man.
Jan, just your pick, so we can move on quickly. What do you think?
I'm taking Columbus in 5.
Okay, there we go. All right, so now I'm going to go down Jan's line, and Russ's line, the Rangers and Carolina. I think both of these teams are going to be like among the top teams in the NHL like 3 to 5 years from now. I don't buy into the fact that the Rangers have dominated the Canes as much as everyone else does. I think that Brind'Amour has played this underdog card to perfection. I mean, they played this card so much to perfection that they voted against it. It's to me. I'm talking about wanting to be the underdog. They've done everything they can to know that they're the underdog. They've gone. I voted against it's even happening, right? The Rangers' hardest thing will be getting out of their own heads here because they know that they're a good team. They know you're a good young team. They know they should beat Carolina in their minds now because everyone's told them they should beat Carolina. So I'm going to go with the Canes and Carolina in 5. Disagreements? Mike disagrees. Go ahead.
I disagree.
Okay, lots of disagreements. Go ahead.
I'll be brief. I don't trust Carolina's goaltending. I never have. How Mrazek played in the exhibition game didn't give me any more confidence. Right. I don't know whether playing in the regular season and winning 4 straight means anything. Probably throw that out the window. I just like the goaltending advantage for the Rangers, whether it's Shesterkin or whether it's Lundqvist. I think they're better, and I think that the Rangers can generate offense against Carolina. If they do that, I think they win the series. I picked them in 5.
So Kevin, then Jan. Go ahead, Kevin.
I agree with what Mike said.
Okay.
Normally you say throughout the regular season, but boy, the Rangers just had their way with them in 4 games, and You know, you can't deny those facts. And the Rangers are so much a better team in the second half than they were in the first half because, you know, Adam Fox got more games. You know, the young goalie started to take charge. And, that, you know, even with young goalie, you know, they have a goaltending advantage now over Mrazek. So there's a lot I like about it. And as talented as the Hurricanes are up front, they don't have a Panarin. They don't have a guy
for sure.
An MVP candidate. You know, they have some great players, but you know they don't have Panarin, and I don't think they have a Zibanejad either. So and they score exactly the same amount of goals as the Carolina Hurricanes. So their offenses are the same, and I think the defense is much better than their numbers would indicate.
I would like a 15-second rebuttal.
Go ahead.
The only thing is, Kev, you're right when you're saying the Rangers have better stars, although I think Teravainen is getting close to Zibanejad in that level, but he's not going to be the goal scorer, obviously. He's more of an assist guy. But at the end of the day, if David Quinn plays that same way they played against the Islanders, they're playing right into the Hurricanes' hands. He's trying to play it different than he played it in the regular season, and they didn't score against the Islanders, and that is a worry.
Okay, Jan, go ahead.
So a couple of things. So, I mean, we talked about the depth that Carolina has on the blue line, and we thought that adding Vatanen and Shea was just, you know, piling on. Turns out they're going to need both of them come this series because Hamilton is going to be out, at least as far as we know, although we practiced in a tinted visor today after the practice, and also Brett Pesce is out, right? Up front, I mean, Carolina gets a boost getting Martin Necas back, and we talked about a couple times that getting Trocheck back is a big addition to them because he's likely going to be their number 2 center. To me, I've talked a couple times, throughout the first and second line for the Rangers, we know what Zibanejad can do. We know what Panarin can do. To me, for them to win this series, Kakko and Hedl are both going to have to produce and be able to offset the fact that you know they're going to match up heavily against the Panarin and the Zibanejad line. So to me, yes, goalie, I don't know who's going to start. Quinn is keeping it very close to the vest. To talk about Russ's point, I think you're going to see a totally different Ranger game than you did against the Islanders. I think they're going to throw that out the window and recognize they can't play that game. They got to play to their strengths. Would I be surprised if Carolina won? Not at all. I said before, and take out the 4-0 record, take out the historical mark. They're not playing at MSG. They're not playing in Carolina. It's a neutral site game. So I think that helps Carolina to a certain extent. I just think that the Rangers' goaltending is going to be the difference regardless of who's in net, and they're going to eke out a series that's going to be an insanely close. I wouldn't be surprised if every game goes 1-goal games down the stretch, and they're going to have to kind of protect the 1 goal.
You're starting to convince me. I'm hovering a little bit. I'm still staying with what I said, but you guys made some really excellent points. And I don't know. I think you're right, Jan. Right down the stretch, every overtime games, fun stuff that we'll see.
Tell the chat room. Obviously, I know the Rangers scored, but they didn't score like you would expect them to score.
Yeah. Okay, it's Pittsburgh Montreal. This series, of course, feels like the easiest one to predict, right? And that should scare the hell out of you if you've been covering this sport for any period of time. This is the Penguins are, you know, the Penguins and Canadians. The Canadians are very young, very fast. They obviously don't have very much depth at all. They trade away their depth at the trade deadline, even. I'm going with the Penguins in 5. But I'm going to tell you this, that if you have any money and you want to bet on something, bet the house on Montreal winning game 1 of this series.
No, don't.
Game 1 of this series is all Montreal. I already have a bet with Mike Ogello, by the way.
I'm not worried about him. I'm not worried about the
Montreal, and he's picking.
I think he's got to get an Expos jersey to wear also then.
Yeah, something like that, right? So, Mike's going to make a Jello head of himself that we will call Mike Ogello. And if I lose, I have to wear a baseball jersey and profess the happiness of that sport. But anyway, I'm going Penguins in 5, but I honestly believe that this series could go to Montreal. And if I had any guts at all, I would go with Montreal. But I should. Someone should, because I should, but I'm not. But I'm telling you, game 1, mark it down. Forget about it right now. Remember what happens. Game 1, Montreal. No.
The only rebuttal I have is I think it's a Penguin sweep, and I think this is similar to when Muhammad Ali fought Jean-Pierre Koopman. Look it up.
Okay. All right. Anybody on Montreal's band?
Habs in 3.
No, you could have said Tyson Spinks there, Russ.
All right, we'll move on then. Islanders in Florida. Kind of a tough series. I mean, we saw Florida play Tampa, and play terribly against Tampa. It's hard to almost you don't want to put too much on that because that was Tampa, but Florida did look lost to me. They kind of are lost when you think about it. The way they play, a lot of the time. They don't know really. I don't think they have a real identity to what they are. And I don't think they know which direction they should go. They are giants. I mean, they're big. They're a big ass team. We talked about that. Their defense are all like 6'5". It's insanity. But they're slow. They're kind of slow sometimes. And Bobrovsky could win this series, right? There's no two ways about that. He could become Bobrovsky and do what he did against Tampa last year in the first round and win this series. But I don't think he does. I think Barry Trotz is just too good of a coach. I really think we saw Barry Trotz just coach. He's coached Quinn under the table the other day. He's going against a harder coach here, no questions about it. But I still think Trotz is better. So I'm going Islanders in 4. Anybody disagree with that?
I would agree with that. I think the point you made, by the way, where you said that they looked lost. Well, that's how they've looked all season.
Yeah.
And I think people think Quenneville's going to save them in the playoffs, but he's not a miracle worker. Unless Bobrovsky is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. I think this is almost the best lock. I think the Islanders are totally prepared to dismantle what's left of the Panthers' confidence.
Yeah.
Well, the one certain thing here is that somebody has to win this series, but I find so many flaws on both sides that I question whether that's the case. I think
count how bad the Islanders have been since January 1st. Like they're like the 20th team in the NHL since January 1st.
Yeah. I picked the Islanders in 5 because I think the Islanders can effectively play the style of game that they want to play more than Florida can. I mean, if Ekblad plays great, if they generate offense with Huberdeau, Barkov, and Hoffman, okay. Yeah. But you saw with the Rangers how the Islanders sort of suffocated them. Yeah. I think they can do that to Florida. And when it comes down to it, this year, Bobrovsky really has not made has stood out and made a monster save. He's really disappointed, and I really think the pressure after this playoff, if they lose to the Islanders, will swing on Dale Talon and Joel Quenneville because of the way this team has performed inconsistently all year.
I know what's really telling, Mike, about that. When you watch Bobrovsky on Florida, he does make a lot of the initial saves that are really incredible. But then their rebound, there's 1 rebound, 2 rebounds, that kind of thing, and you can see it, like the difference between that and having, like you said, like Werenski and and other great defensemen in front of you, like Kevin Columbus, who are clearing out those second and third rebounds better. That's a huge deal. I mean, Bob makes the initial saves. He does make some amazing initial saves, but he doesn't. But that defense does not clear the porch for him. And
no, they're not good. And Matheson's a hot mess. And
all right. So I want to also pick the top 4 team rankings in this Eastern Conference while we're here. And how we think that's going to play out, which will give us our playoff matchups to a great. For me, number 1, Tampa. I just think they're by far the best team in the East, probably the NHL. Number 2, I'm going to go with Philly because I know this is kind of like surprising perhaps, but like I said, Philly has a winning record against these 3 other teams, and they seem to be still on a bit of a roll. They won that game. The way they won that game in Pittsburgh was really a positive experience for them. Number 3, Boston, because I don't think Boston really cares too much about this. I don't think Boston, to me, Boston doesn't. I think Philly will care more about getting the second spot than Boston will care about these 3 games. And number 4, Washington, who I think is looking old to me. They are the oldest team in the NHL, but it's not just that they're finished. Remember, this is not really a continuation of the last season. This is the beginning of the next season that we're pretending to be a continuation of the last season. So to me, this is like Washington's a year older team, and that's what I kind of see in them. So anyone disagree with those thoughts? Kevin, what are your top? You give me your 4.
I'm going to actually put Boston 1.
Boston 1, okay.
Yeah, just like there was in the regular season. I just think they're just machine-like in the way they play, and they were so close last year, and I think they are just as hungry. But I'm going to put, I think I'm just going to have it the same way you have it. There's no doubt I have Washington last.
The Boston, Philly,
and I do think the Flyers are for real. But I would no. I mean, I'm going to put Boston 1, and then I'm going to put Philadelphia 2, and then I'm going to put Tampa 3. You had Tampa 1.
Yeah, we just flipped Tampa and Boston. That's it.
Right, which is I don't know. They're both good teams.
Yeah, they're both go either way. Anyone else want to chime in on the 1 through 4?
Go ahead, Russ.
I definitely think Tampa's 1. I would go Boston 2. I'm going to go Flyers 3. I'm only going Washington 4 because I'm worried about when Carlson went into the wall. I mean, Washington looked really good in that game. Hopi looked really good in that game. But if they don't have Carlson, they're in trouble.
I mean, I'll agree with the ratings. My only caveat is let's see how badly injured Brad Marchand is, because that could also have an impact in terms of the standings. And I think that has to be a huge factor here.
Yeah, I was going to go the same that you went, except I was flipping Philly and Washington. I had Washington 2 and Philly 4.
Okay.
With Tampa at 1 and Boston at 3. I don't think, I don't think that the round robin really means anything to the Bruins. You know what I'm saying? It's like I don't think they're going to be motivated for that. Again, the playoffs for them really starts in the second week of August.
Really, they do. I agree with you. Now, the interesting thing is if all my picks were to happen, which of course they will, we're going to end up with an incredible playoff first round in the East. Ready? This is what it comes out to. Tampa will take on Columbus. How about that? That would be fun, wouldn't it?
It would be interesting. But
we all want to see that, right? That's amazing. The Capitals will play the Penguins. Can you beat that ever? I mean, you got Ovechkin versus Crosby. Boston will play Carolina, which they have history in the playoffs. They've played a lot.
Conference final rematch.
Yeah. Yep. And the Flyers will play the Islanders, which is the only team in the entire East the Flyers don't have a winning record against.
That's not a great matchup for them.
Terrible matchup for the Flyers. So that's me. If you're looking at 4 really fun series, if it ended up that way.
But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Exactly. I know that's out.
What are the odds? That got them all right.
I know, but it's just fun to look at. All right, going out west.
Show long enough.
I'm going to start with the hardest one. I think Edmonton. Well, not the hardest. Edmonton, Chicago. Some people are saying it's hardest. I actually don't think this is a question of anything. I think Edmonton takes this in 3. I think Edmonton's on a roll. I think what we saw with Chicago was really impressive, no question, against St. Louis. But I almost wish they didn't win so easily. I kind of want them to battle a little bit more. I think that Crawford can play one game, sure, but when you're talking about a whole series, I don't know. To me, this is Edmonton. It looks like a team that's a year older and better than they were. They feel like they're better. So Edmonton. In 3, I'm going with disagreements.
I'll go with Edmonton in 4 because Patrick Kane's going to have one game where he goes crazy. Chicago will have at least 1 or 2 games where the score is high, and Edmonton won't be able to keep the score down every game, even though Tippett will try. But I do think Edmonton will take it pretty easily.
Okay.
I went Edmonton in 5. I think that Chicago's veteran savvy. And the fact that they're rested, you're going to have Taves and Kane, and you also saw the young guys like Kirby Dach and Kubalik play well in the exhibition game. If Dach takes a step forward, that's another thing in terms of matchups. Remember, Edmonton is a front-heavy team. Now, they have the best 2 forwards or 2 of the best forwards in the league, but really their 3rd and 4th lines are not great. And if Chicago's 3rd and 4th lines beat them, then that evens it up. Where I think Chicago will eventually lose is their defense is just not good enough. And I can see McDavid just blowing by them like they're standing still. So that's why the win.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'm going Edmonton in 4.
Okay.
I just think, as Russ pointed out, Patrick Kane and Taves, there's a lot of pride there, so they'll get a win. But you can't measure up defensively to that speed and the offense that the Oilers have.
Yep. Jan, where are you?
Same. I'm going Edmonton in 4. I mean, I think Crawford, if he's really healthy, could maybe steal one game, supported by Kane and Taves, because I think Taves will have a pretty decent series. I just think Edmonton is too quick and too good for Chicago right now.
All right, Nashville, Arizona. When we first did this whole experiment, I went with Arizona, and I'm flipping. Because I liked what I saw with Nashville yesterday, and I didn't like anything I saw with Arizona last night. And I especially didn't like. There's something about Taylor Hall that is just. He's working hard. He's trying. He's out there. He's hustling. There's no choice about it. He's Taylor Hall. He's working his tail off. But when you look at his expressions on his face, he is like so going through the motions to me. Do you get that? It's like it's really just he is.
I don't know if he's going through the motions. I don't think he's clicked with anybody there.
Yeah, he feels like he's on an island to me, and
that's what it is.
He has to win this thing by himself, and he's playing that way. He's playing as hard as he possibly can, but his frustration level keeps growing every time he gets back to the bench, and bad things haven't happened, and good things haven't happened. Phil Kessel looked terrible.
Phil Kessel's
he made a defensive play. He did.
I know, and the goaltending, and the big thing that they have, which is their goaltending. That wasn't there last night. And I really kind of liked what I saw. Nashville won the kind of game Nashville's got to win, the kind of game they got to play. So I'm going Nashville in 5.
Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I flipped as well. I was an Arizona person, and now that I watched the teams played, and I think what we maybe underappreciated was the impact John Hines has had in Nashville and how he sort of has transformed that team. All we want to remember is the statistics that we saw that Johansson and Duchesne had horrible seasons, which they really did. But in the second half of the season, Hines got Duchesne playing a little bit better, and I've heard through the grapevine that they're going to put the Forsberg, Arvidsson, Johansson line back together at the request of the players. Who said, we're a much better team when those guys, and a guy like Kyle Turris has performed better as well. And when I watched them play, I could see all that they've come back and they're a much better team than they were early in the season. And I didn't like what I saw out of Arizona. And you know what? I don't even. Does anyone even consider Phil Kessel a factor anymore?
No, I mean,
Phil Kessel's been moved down to the fourth line.
I mean, he's been a good playoff player in the past, so I want to keep giving him the benefit of the doubt. But
yeah, you do, but I don't know. I just don't even think about him anymore when I think of the Coyotes and what they need. But I'm taking Nashville as well, although I don't think it'll be easy. I think it'll be 4 or 5.
I originally back in when the playoff matchups were determined, I originally picked the Coyotes because I thought that Kemper coming back was going to be the difference, but I didn't. And I'm not basing my switch to on specifically the exhibition game. I just think that right now I look at that team and I don't think they really know what they're good at, and that's problematic. Whereas I think Nashville, I think Hines. It recognizes that if Saros is the better goalie, he's not going to say, well, I have to go with Pekka Rinne because Pekka Rinne has been there all this time. No, he's going to go with the better goalie because he knows that they could lose if Rinne has a bad
really thing for a coach, which is a coach is like one of the best things the easiest thing a coach can do is can claim a new goalie. That's like if a coach claims a new goalie, and which he has done kind of, and this is nothing against Rinne, but you're right. I mean, Saros is small though. Saros' issue is playing against a team like the Blues. But not against a team like Arizona. To me, that's they're okay.
I initially went with Arizona, but with what's going on in the organization, I feel like this team. I feel like it has gone down to the team now. There seems to be a lot of uncertainty in their play. Tocchet really was frustrated in that game. I know Rick talked a little bit, and they weren't doing anything he wanted them to do. I think Nashville's going to sweep him now that they have confidence because they have players that have been there, and I just think they're going to steamroll them now.
I think Nashville in 4. And Kev, next week when we have you on the show, we have to carve out about 10 to 15 minutes to talk about Chaika and what happened with the Coyotes because it can't be encapsulated in a couple minutes. But Jay, go ahead.
I'm kind of agreeing here. I mean, I think the key point is going to be who's going to end up playing goal between the two of them. We talked a lot about Saros or Rinne. I think I'm also one of those who picked Arizona earlier when we did this, but seeing what we saw the other day and seeing just how Nashville seems to have coalesced, especially in net with either Saros or Rinne, and I think it's going to be Saros. I'm giving them a slight edge. I do think it's going to be a 4 or 5 game series and a pretty tough one at that.
Yeah, Vancouver, Minnesota. To me, this is almost a no-brainer. I think the Wild take this in 4, and I think that. I mean, I was so impressed with the way the Wild played against Colorado. So impressed with the way how they played the second half of the season, and we saw the Vancouver Winnipeg game where neither team played any defense at all. Wasn't the best tune-up for Vancouver for this series. This is that they really, if you were to face a team that you don't want, that's not going to be anything like the team you're going to play in the first round, they did it in Winnipeg. Minnesota is a different ball of wax. I think this is Minnesota in 4. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I don't know if it was you or somebody else yesterday said it, but it was a good analogy. This is the Leafs Blue Jackets.
Probably wasn't me, but go ahead.
Okay, this is the Leafs Blue Jackets of the Western Conference because you've got a wide open offensive team playing against a team that's more structured defensively. But I think there are more question marks. Yeah, I think there are more question marks with Minnesota's goaltending than there are with Toronto's goaltending. Because I think Anderson's a more established guy, and Dubnyk had an off year, and Stalock, in spite of that, he only had a .910 save percentage, which is not great. So they won games with him, but they won it, I think, in spite of him. And they played great in the last 2 to 3 weeks after they fired Boudreau, right before the shutdown, and that was what made the difference to get them in the playoff race. I don't know if that's sustainable, but I do think that the Vancouver talent offensively could shine through. So in a way, I'm going opposite of what I did in the East, and I'm taking the offensive team. I'm taking the Canucks in 5.
All right, I'm going to go Minnesota in 5 only because I fear that the new coach is going to go with Stalock first because that's who did well and he wants to reward him, and he's going to get stung with that, and I think he's going to lose the first game and they're going to go back to Dubnyk. I do like Vancouver's power play, and I like their speed, but Vancouver is going to have to skate around the physical nature of the Wild's defense and just their team in general. I think that's what's going to do them in, and that's why I've got the Wild.
Yeah.
I'm going Minnesota in 5 as well. I do think that the Wild were not a momentum team as much as they were a team that Evason sort of convinced and persuaded them this is how they need to play in order to be successful. I don't think they really knew what their identity was. I think Evason helped at least find a way that they can win. So I think that is sustainable because I think it's just a playing style more than it was a moving of personnel. However, I'm a little bit worried about picking Minnesota because we've all been wrong about Vancouver all year. Like everybody's waiting for them to fail, and they always found a way. Now, primarily it was on the strength of their goalkeeper, but there's more to them than just their goaltender. They have a lot of quality players, and they just seem to rise up. So I'm taking Minnesota in 5, but I'm worried.
I'm not as worried, Kev. Did you not see, Kev? Did you watch the game? Because Eric Stahl looks revitalized. That's why I'm not worried.
So,
yeah,
okay.
he's a playoff guy, right? So, Jan, did you go?
I'm thanking Kevin for the segue because I'm actually taking Vancouver in 5. So I agree with everything everybody said in terms of Stahl and how Minnesota looked. I just have a feeling that Pettersson is going to go off this series, and have a feeling that Markstrom playing for that big new contract is going to stone the Wild. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's 5. This may be the best series of all the series that we see, just in terms of talent and the way the game flow is. I'm taking Vancouver, though, in 5 in this series.
Okay, Calgary, Winnipeg, final series that we have in the West. This one I feel like Calgary is everybody has just jumped on Calgary sucking, and that always kind of worries me. I don't think they're as bad as they are as people think they are. I think there's some power there. Winnipeg, and when everybody thinks Winnipeg's amazing, and they've got the great goaltending, obviously. So I'm going with Winnipeg, but this series, like the Montreal Pittsburgh series, and the other one is the one I'm most nervous about because I think that I could see Calgary getting it together, and I could see Winnipeg, who the thing we saw about the Jets this year was what? Like the Jets were either incredible or awful. Like they went back and forth. They had such a crazy season. They won 10 games in a row twice, didn't they? And then but then also they lost like 9 out of 12 or something like that. I don't know what if the Jets are still really good, which they looked good, but again, that game against Vancouver, it's a hard game to judge because it was just a shootout. And Calgary's got more defense than that, but Calgary just doesn't have goaltending. At the end of the day, that's the thing. Winnipeg, it's got to be Winnipeg in 5, unless one of the Calgary goalies just steps up.
I have Winnipeg in 4, and the thing that I with Winnipeg is their defense after the deadline with DeMello being added was better, but I think offensively, the only thing that stinks for them is they're not getting Brian Little back. But I think depth wise, they have a third line with Lowry and Andrew Kopp that beats teams into the ground, and I think offensively their top 2 lines are better than Calgary, and Calgary's defense, although is better, is not as good as it should be because Hamonic is not going to be there. And I think Winnipeg overall is the better of the 2 teams. So I'm going Jets in 4.
Anybody going?
I think honestly, none of us like what we saw out of the Gaudreau, Monahan, Lindholm line the other day, and I think that concerned a lot of us.
Yeah,
Chuck was the best player in that, and we talked about Cody Eakin slides between Ehlers and Laine, giving them a really good second line, and I do think that Winnipeg is just too good and too deep and too fast and too talented to lose to the Flames, especially with their issues in net between either Rittich or Talbot.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'm Winnipeg as well. I would say that they can't afford for a Hellebuck to be off a little bit because I think the defense would be exposed.
Right.
If he wasn't so good, but he has been that good, and I love their collection. Connor and Patrick Laine and Shifley and Wheeler. That's fun. That's a fun collection.
It's a fun, and they have like 4 lines that can score. They really have a lot. I mean, that's the other thing too. Like they won that game the other night, and and Shifley and Wheeler and Wheeler had 1 goal, but Shifley, Wheeler, Liney were barely factors in that game. They can still manage to score without them. All right, top.
I'm going to add this, Ek. News just broke. David Quinn said Tony DeAngelo is now a game time decision. Didn't practice today. If the Rangers lose DeAngelo, that is a massive blow to their power play.
Yes.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. All right. Top 4 teams in this one. For me, it's pretty simple. It's Colorado, St. Louis, Vegas, and Dallas in that order. And the only caveat I throw in there is maybe St. Louis doesn't care enough to do anything here. But but that's the only thing. I think the other 3 teams are all kind of on a mission. And I think Calgary, Colorado, Vancouver, and Dallas will be there.
I have Vegas, Colorado, St. Louis, Dallas. Dallas, with their lack of offense that they showed. Yeah, again, I'm not basing it just solely on the one exhibition game, but they didn't score many goals during the regular season. They were the best goals against in the league, but it's hard to imagine that a team with Sagan, Radulov, and Ben and the defense that they have just can't score goals. Or
Sagan didn't play though.
Right, I know Sagan didn't play, but or the fact is that they're playing such a responsible defensive style that they only want to score 2 goals so they can limit the other team to 1. But that troubles me.
Yeah. Kevin, top 4.
Go ahead.
I got Colorado, but I like Vegas a lot here too. I think it almost feels like we're not giving Vegas enough credit for the talent they have. But McKinnon is such a beast. So I'm going Colorado and Vegas. Dallas is 4.
Okay, there we go.
I'm going Colorado, Vegas, Dallas, St. Louis. I don't think St. Louis cares.
They might not care for this round. Jan, what are your thoughts?
I'm taking Colorado first.
Mm-hmm.
I think St. Louis is second. I think Vegas is third and Dallas fourth, but you can kind of mix them. I just think Colorado is the most talented. St. Louis probably, as you said, doesn't care where they place. Given what we saw out of them last year in terms of their rise and where they came from under the standings, but that's kind of my view. I just think Colorado's too good and likely will finish first in the round robin.
There you go. Okay, so but for what it's worth, if everything happens like I said it would, which we know it will, the playoffs would be St. Louis and Colorado would play Minnesota, which would be a rematch of what we saw the other day. That'd be fun. That would be a fun series. I really wouldn't mind watching that series. So the second I had was St. Louis. I go back and forth on that, but I'm going to say St. They would play Nashville. So they would play.
That'd be a series.
No, actually, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. They would play Winnipeg. St. Louis would play Winnipeg. That's a 5.65 to 5.63 winning percentage. All right, so they would play Winnipeg. So St. Louis, Winnipeg, still fun. And then so that would bring us to
Edmonton,
Nashville, and Vegas. Nashville and Vegas and Edmonton, right? Is that right?
Yeah, and Edmonton and who?
Edmonton would play Dallas. So that's what it would be.
Oh, okay, that's a team that
a good matchup for them.
Yeah.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
There's contrasting styles there. My goodness.
Yeah.
But I want to bring this up before we end the show because it was funny because I think it was Cam Atkinson in one of the post-game availabilities yesterday brought this up. And I think it's going to be a big key, Kev, in these playoffs. Columbus, obviously not a big offensive team. And he was asked about the ice conditions, and he said at the ends of the periods, the ice was getting rather choppy. And obviously, it's August in Toronto; they're playing multiple games a day. If you don't think that feeds into like Tortorella with the type of game his team is going to play against the high-flying Leafs, or in Edmonton when it's Minnesota playing against the high-flying Canucks. That is going to be a big factor in these series, is the skill teams and the ability of them being able to show their skill on an ice surface that may not be perfect.
The Toronto's going to get screwed here, basically, you're saying, because they're going to end up playing the late games.
Yeah, John will be out with the tire iron. Yeah.
No, because so it makes. But also I'll say this benefits Montreal against Pittsburgh too. So playing the later games as well.
I think John is going to hate these Zoom calls too. I think he's going to bitch.
He's already. He was.
Okay.
I told you when he was asked about what he was telling his players in the locker room. He's basically said it's none of your GD business what I talk to my players about.
Columbus has a lot of really smart people working for them in the in technology department. I'm surprised they haven't like Max Headroom Tortorella yet. You know, like
No,
I think if you have a business where you teach people how to deal with the media, you should take the Zoom calls from Cassidy and Brindamore. Those two guys. In the conference finals last year, I remember writing about this. Like, it was such a joy to go to a press conference with either of those guys because you came away feeling like you've discovered interesting stuff about the team. They're not afraid of questions. Like, it doesn't bother them. They don't think they're curing cancer. They're just playing hockey. And, they don't tell you, state secrets, but they'll give you stuff to make it interesting to write about. They care about, the game. So I wish everyone was like that.
What's funny, Kev? When you talk to Cassidy, he does seem like a coach, but he's a down-to-earth coach. When you interview Brindamore, you still think you're interviewing a player. He used to just be like that around his locker. If you hung around his locker for a while, he would just start talking about anything, and he's like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just those two. I mean, Mike Sullivan is very good as well. To be honest, if you get John Tortorella one-on-one, I'm a big Tortorella guy. Like, I have never had a problem with him.
Kev, I love Torts, but I think he does this more for effect now because he was being interviewed in Columbus, and in the previous day, Sheldon Keefe had been asked by the Toronto media about his relationship with Tortorella because he played under Tortorella in Tampa Bay. And Torts gets the question from a Columbus reporter. And he says, I'm only going to talk about this once. I'm not going to talk about it here. So I know I'm going to be asked this question in Toronto. So I'm not going to answer it now. I'll answer it then. And she's debating what he's going to answer and when he's going to answer it.
Yeah. So, and why that's so hard for him. Like, what it would take him, 90 seconds out of his life to give a good quote. And,
I guarantee you he's FaceTiming his dog every night.
He's trying to control everything, right? So he's even trying to control when he answers what questions. So he's like sitting there as a control freak. That's what he wants to do. So even though it would be simpler and way less, he doesn't care how many. He obviously doesn't care about what anybody says about him. That's not going to happen. So,
no, but he FaceTimes his dogs every night, and his handle is probably Dog's Dad. And if we all saw that, we would think differently about him.
Yeah, no.
Well, he has said publicly, Russ, that he likes dogs more than he likes people.
Yeah, we do know that, and we've seen that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you might be in that category too. I
would say Russ is in that category, 100%.
I might be in that category.
And Kevin, you're pretty close to it too. I know that.
There are a lot of dogs that are nicer than people.
No, I mean, dogs are phenomenal, and it's just like, and this is the thing. Tortorella is not a bad person. Like, he's actually a really good guy. Like, he's flat out, and dog lovers, are good people usually. He's a good guy. He has
a short fuse at times.
He doesn't want to share what he's doing with the media. That's all. He just says he has to be. Part of that is because everything he's doing, I believe, is so freaking calculated. Like, and to the point where he lies to his team in a predictive way for him. And he's calculated all that, but when the media hits him and he's got to answer questions, he's got to continue whatever story he's got going on with his team into that. So because he can't just say something different to the media than he's saying to his players.
I know nothing about Italians with short fuses.
You know why I like him too? I didn't cover this guy, and my dad told me about him because he's a lot older than me, but I knew about him. He reminds me of Leo DeRocher.
Yeah.
I didn't know who that was.
I know
a famous baseball manager who always was called Leo the Lip. That was his nickname.
Okay, yeah.
I know for a fact that he has had some blow-ups with players that would not put him in a good light.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know players who absolutely love playing for him.
Right.
So it's a very complicated mix. He's always treated me fine, one-on-one. He's never great in press conferences. It's like Mike Babcock. Like a lot of guys, certainly in Toronto, it wasn't fun for reporters. But, I've known Babcock forever, and, he's in a one-on-one interview, he's among the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, you know what's funny about Babcock, Kev? I noticed when he would be in Philly, if you got him before a game in the visitors' locker room and it's just 3 or 4 guys, it was a great, 10 minutes compared to after the game. You're right.
And by the way,
there's a predictable crazy about some people that you like they're crazy, but they're predictably crazy.
Right.
I would say though, I would put Peter Laviolette up for among the worst post-game interviews. Him and Sutter.
No,
Peter Laviolette and Daryl Sutter are among the worst. They just can't come down. So you know, and if you were a Canadian and you asked Sutter, you had at least a fighting chance of getting an answer, but not an American.
You look at that guy like John Cooper, right? Cooper's like really obviously one of the nicest guys out there, really great, fantastic. And then you see him, you watch like behind the scenes or whatever. And he's talking to his team in the locker room, and they have a video of him doing that. And he's talking the same way he talks to the media. He's talking to them like completely, utterly, like professionals. This is our job, we got, and he's talking to them with absolute like thinking that they are at a high level of intelligence, and this is what I'm going to tell you. And I think that he's able to, so he keeps the same persona all the time. And I think the problem is like the guys you're talking about, Sutter, Laviolette, Babcock, Tortorella, they all have like a way they feel they need to talk to players. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're able to shift that out of that for press conference.
Cooper, I know someone that went to college with him, and she's basically told me it's the same guy.
That's what he is.
She still goes like every once in a while, meets up with him after a game, and it's the same guy. So it doesn't shock me.
Yeah. But and some people don't think that works. There are people, I've talked to people who are like, yeah, he's a great guy, but look at that team hasn't won anything yet. Yeah. And that's hard to put that on him. But hockey players, maybe they need to be talked to more like, Sutter.
Yeah, but I always say this, but he hasn't won until he's won. We do this all the time, and it's.
Everybody said that about Joe Torre for sure.
Yeah, he's got the team to a Stanley Cup final. He's had them on top for a very long time.
I agree.
Did they have a terrible experience with Columbus last year? Yeah,
of course.
Did he face the music for that? Sure, but is he? You can't cast him with a guy that can't win the championship game.
I agree. I'm just saying.
I think Sullivan's a lot better now than he was as an assistant with the Rangers with Torts, but also it may have been because of his interactions with Torts.
Here's a funny tale about that. You will find people who played for Sullivan as the assistant in Torts saying Sullivan was a lot harder to deal with than Tortorella.
Wow.
I believe that.
You will find people. I've had players that say, Sullivan has sort of changed his ways. Like he was even more harsh than Tortorella. Like sometimes Tortorella had to be the good cop.
And I think that comes down to predictable craziness again, because from what I've heard about Sullivan too, is he is very unpredictable in how he'll react to things. Where Torts is crazy, but how he's going to react to it. And for players, like players hate unpredictability more than anything in the world. Like they want to know, they don't care if you're a jerk, but just tell me you're a jerk and you're a jerk. I got it.
Right.
That's like the thing. But if you're nice to me and then you're a jerk and then you're nice to me again, that's like not, players hate that. They absolutely.
Yeah, Sullivan's a good guy. I like dealing with him as well. There's been very few coaches in my career that I've not enjoyed my experiences with for the most part.
Yeah.
But obviously some are better than others. But
I'll tell you, the nicest I ever saw was Larry Robinson when he was with the Devils. You want to talk about a guy who was just happy to coach, and he would welcome the media into the media room. He would be there at the door. Like, it was crazy. I'm like, this is Larry Robinson. But
I found Larry Robinson was one of the nicest guys, and he had a lot of enthusiasm for the project. But he was like Pat LaFontaine. Like Pat could talk to you for 40 minutes, but when you were done, he hadn't told you a whole lot. I found that with Larry as well. He was cooperative, and he did. My dog, by the way, is.
Oh yeah, love it.
So,
She's like, you told me 2:00 walk.
That's what she wants to go out. That's for sure.
LaFontaine could sell ice to Eskimos. That's LaFontaine's like a sales guy all the way to me.
Yeah, we're still live, folks. Did you?
I know we got to go. we're starting to switch into non-live mode. I realize that too. Thank you very much. Remember about the buzz, folks. It is just hockey, but you know what? Enjoy the weekend. Great hockey coming up.